The film industry is fucked.
Or is it?
My name is Karl Erikson. I'm a writer and director,
And I'm Omar Portilla, producer and filmmaker.
and this is our podcast. What we're going to get into today is what is a network?
Right.
And simply put, it's a collection of people who you trust and who you know and are willing to answer your call, right? So it's not
Right.
followers, it's not connections, it's not just that random name in your phone. It's real relationships.
Right. People you worked with before, people who you trust in whatever capacity that they've held a position in. This goes back to the conversation we had on our first podcast. You should be able to find the answer within two phone calls. And those phone calls are going to be people in your network who are going to have an idea, an answer, or somebody who might be able to answer your question.
Yeah, and it could be someone, a cousin who owns a restaurant, a DP who you've worked with. That's your network. A local reporter who you've worked with before, who released things about your process, whether it's pre-production, whether you're in production locally, or whether you're releasing your film. I have relationships with local businesses, so Eminado, Ice Cream for All, Flounder, the Polish Pickle, local businesses like that are now in my network. The people who I've spoken with and
Right.
people I've worked with, and we've had a partnership with. Have you talked to your mayor before about doing something in your town? Festival programmers. Omar is my network. So these are all people who are part of your network. And I like to think that there's three categories of network. There's your network, there's your extended network, and then there's your audience.
Right.
So I like to think that Omar is my network. Nick Petronero, who shot my film, is my network. The local businesses who I worked with, like I just said, they are my network. Um, Relationships like that are your network. Actors are your network. People, who you know and have worked with and are going to answer your call. Your extended network, and we're going to go into detail for all these, but your extended network are going to be people who maybe have donated um, to your crowdfunding or have been an extra in your film or who have followed and shared and have some way been involved in your journey.
Right.
Not necessarily helping you make the project, but have been there to support you. And
Right.
then your network is also your audience. These are people who are going to follow your journey, and that's really it. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I'm just saying like that you're not going to call them and say, "Hey, I'm making a movie. I need you." Right? They're
Right.
going to be there for when you're done with your film. So those are the three types of, I think, networks that are going to be the most important to you. That's different than networking,
It
right?
is. Absolutely, it is. Networking is needed for film to build your network, but at the same time, it's a double-edged sword. And we've both been in rooms where we've met somebody who's come in and kind of just want to impose themselves. Like, oh, hi, I'm so-so. I'm making this great film. Here, you should follow me. Here. Like, and the thing about networking is it's a mutual understanding. Like, it's a mutual interest, mutual respect is shared when networking with somebody. Like, hey, I'll do so-so. Oh, I do this. I do audio, and I would really like to see if if you need help with anything or, X, Y, and Z. But then you'll see that's what you kind of want to build people who you'll be able to have a conversation, who'll be able to actually put some kind of input, genuine input into what you're doing as a filmmaker producer versus somebody who's like, well, I don't want to help you, but I want you to help me. And I think that's a double-edged sword we kind of have to start looking at when we talk about networking versus who's in your network, who you want to keep in your network.
Yeah, and I think to expand on that, I think it's not a collection of people, right?
Yeah.
It's not just a collection of people who you've met. It's a collection of people who you've built a relationship with.
Right.
And so when they talk about networking events, that's an opportunity for you to not go through and just collect names of all the people in the room.
Or business cards.
Right. Exactly, because that's not your network. You're not just going to call them and be like, I've got this project, you're going to be involved. Because if you're just collecting business cards, they haven't met Karl, they haven't met Omar, they haven't met you. Um, it's an opportunity for you to talk about who you are, what your goals are, and I think most importantly, and hopefully this is vice versa, listening, right? You don't want to just stand there and bombard someone, like as you were explaining, like the person who comes in and says, "These are my projects. You're lucky to be a part of them." When you go to these events and you're someone like Karl, who immediately assumes when I walk in the door that no one wants to talk to me. And that's true. I walk in there and I say, "Where's the line? Where's the line between providing information about my projects and bragging,
Right.
or overselling?" I get very, very weird about that. And I think one of the great things about, again, having Omar on my side and having my wife on my side when it comes to social events is they remind me before I walk in, hey, these people are in the same shoes as you. They just want to
Right.
find out who you are, and they just want to find out if you're compatible moving forward at this time. Like you can still build a relationship and say, all right, well, it's not going to work right now, but I really, I really like this person, and maybe in a future project, this will work. And a prime example is when I went to the New Jersey Film Expo. Is that what it's called, Omar? New Jersey
Yeah, I think
Film.
it's, yeah, New Jersey Film Expo
So
in
we
the
went.
Meadowlands.
Yes, we went last year, and I was like, what do I do? And,
Right.
people were coming to me, and I was very uncomfortable. And I was like, what are these people doing? Why are they just approaching me so confidently and just starting a conversation? And then I realized as I got more comfortable in these situations that when we went this year, again with Omar, um, it was much more relaxed. I was much more involved in meeting people and allowing them to meet me and just saying, yeah, man, this is the project I'm working on. These are the projects I think about
Yeah.
the future. What do you got going on?
So let me ask you that difference from last year to this year's expo. I mean, last year's expo you were working on making your feature film. This
Correct.
year's expo you already had it ready to go and to share it with the world. Would Could that be what actually was a big difference before? Because last year, the previous year, you had to ask people, "Hey, I'm making this film. Are you interested?" Where this was like, "I have a film."
Yes. So yeah, uh, what I have discovered, not just the feature film, but what I've discovered is with projects in general, there's this great kind of relief when you get a project done, like even a short film, but then you also learn its expectation. It's not its expectations, it's limitations,
Mm,
right? So, when you make that short film, it's not 1996 anymore. Everyone's made a short film. So there's this pride and there's this great sense of, I made a movie. And then you meet people and they're really ready to move forward on bigger projects. And they're like, okay, so a short film? Wonderful. What else? And I think that that was a hit to my confidence. And that's mainly
right,
because once you think that you're at this next level and it's exciting, you start to realize where you really need to be. And I think having that feature film and, you know, patting myself on the back saying, I really like the movie that I made. I have a lot of
right,
confidence moving in and saying, you know what? I'm very happy with what I made, and I'd like to tell you about it. I will tell you this though, because obviously there's flaw in all our characters, but I don't know if I would have had the confidence if I didn't have the critic reviews that I had.
right,
So almost like I needed outside validation to feel good
right,
about myself.
right,
And and I'm just saying this, and it feels weird to say it to everybody, but it's like, I'm sure there's people out there feeling the same way. Like, yeah, I finished it, but is it good? But I feel like I have that validation where I don't think I should have waited for that validation.
right.
I think I should have just said, I made a good fucking movie because I like it. Let me talk about it.
Here's two things to that. The first one being like, I want to kind of get your take on film festival networking versus actual, like just expo networking or just meet and greet in different areas that you can find on different social media apps or places for filmmakers and stuff. But particularly when you go to these film festivals, I found it that it's kind of awkward at times when you're networking at these film festivals because you're there as a producer or a director or a camera operator, cinematographer for a particular film that you are proud of, that you were happy to work on, that you got some kind of thrill, you got some kind of joy of accomplishment. And the very first thing when you're trying to sell that film or the idea, or like, oh yeah, you should watch it. It plays tomorrow in this theater or it plays Wednesday in this theater, the very next question is like, oh, so what's your next project? And I always found that as a kick in the balls almost because like I'm trying to tell you about this one and I know the whole world wants to know so what's next. I haven't even finished this one yet. Like, I'm trying to get people to see it. I want people to kind of like you said give me that validation that it's a good fucking film and I can move on to my next one. But like I've always found that kind of like jarring where you're trying to tell somebody, hey, this is what we just made. This is what I'm proud of. This is what I really like. And they're like, okay, so what's the next one? It's almost like it deflates you a little bit and it puts you like in a weird mindset where I've had found myself having to walk away from that conference room to catch my breath, compose myself, and go back in and say, "Hey, this is the film we just finished up as what I did as a producer or as a director." Like I've always found that very deflating. And the second part is that you're right that it's really hard to kind of sell yourself, to be your own salesman. And I find it a lot easier to go with people because it's hard to sell yourself. But for whatever reason, I love selling my friends, not in like a back door, back alleyway, but like selling, hey, this he's a good director. This is a good film. He's a good DP. Like I've always, especially because a lot of it's true. Like these are great artists in their own right, and I've always found it easier for me to help others sell than sometimes trying to sell myself to a project or at a festival. So I do like the idea of going with the group because if you falter or can't come up with something in your network, somebody will be like, "Oh man, this is great. You should have seen what we did last time, or you should have seen this scene." Or, it's always good to go because you have that support system. Because it is deflating sometimes at these networking parties where like everybody's shaking your hand, they'll tell you what they need, and then they'll walk away, and you're like, "I didn't even get to tell you what I just, who I am or what I did." Okay, thanks. And then you leave with the not so much nowadays because people don't do cards as much, but back in the day, you used to leave with like a handful of cards, and I'm like, I don't even remember one standout person, you know?
Right. So let me ask you though. So you asked if I had confidence walking into the film expo because I had a project behind me.
Right.
You walked into this film expo and you didn't have a project. Do you feel that the stress was off on having to sell something to where you kind of have the upper hand where almost like everyone has to sell themselves to you in a sense? How did you feel walking through the expo? I mean, you're a very confident person in general,
Right.
but like, do you think that makes a difference because you walked in there without a project? Do you feel that that made you more comfortable and easier to be like, well, I don't have to sell myself. Let's talk.
For me, I kind of took like a couple months, almost a year away from like production to kind of get myself back in the mindset, see what direction am I headed? Do I want to continue this path? Do I want to deep dive into another path? I started writing more this year. So I took a kind of break away. So going back into it, at first I kind of felt like I'm going back in. I haven't done anything in here. I haven't been on anybody's shoot. I haven't done anything for a whole year. What are they gonna think? And then I go in there with this idea like bring the best you can, best ideas, best suggestions, and don't let one person's comment kind of pull you down. You've been if people don't know, Karl's a great actor. He has an acting reel, so you should ask him for it.
Such a dick.
But the reason I bring that up is 'cause I used to act too when I was younger. Um,
How
and
did
I
you act?
remember
Like an asshole.
like I acted a fool. That's how I acted. I acted a fool. But I used to remember going into every audition thinking I'm gonna get this. And I would like if a director would say you did great, I'd walk out thinking I'm gonna get the part. I'm gonna get the phone call. 2 weeks go by, you don't get the phone call. And after going through a lot of classes and learning, I had one teacher, Sam. He was like, when you go into an audition, give it all you can. Prepare for it, read the lines, practice with somebody, go in there and land, give the best audition you can, and then forget it ever existed. And he's like, that's gonna be the thing that saves your acting career because most actors get so hung up on one producer or director saying that was the best performance of the day. And you're like, yes, I got the part. And then so much that so that that is in your mind for the next 2 or 3 weeks, and it's affected other auditions. So once I started literally like going, doing the performances, doing the auditions, leaving everything in there, and then once I walked out the door, boom, if I got the call, great. Oh shit, surprise. No, happy birthday, you got the call. And if I didn't, I'm moving on to the next part. That's kind of like the mentality I bring to the when I go to network. Like somebody's not gonna like me for either a film I did or an idea or a question, or if they ask me, my film is great. I'm like, it's good. Oh, why do you think it was great? I'm like, well, I don't want to get down this road. And then they'll like you gotta have that short mentality. You meet somebody, boom, you gotta move on. Especially with a lot of these networking parties because they get crush your dreams real quick, and I've seen it happen.
So to tag on to that, I think that's really important to discuss with networking. When you talked about a casting agent, so this would be for actors, and this idea can kind of uh, blanket any kind of meeting you have.
Right,
And that's the first rule of a meeting or communicating is don't be an asshole. So you go into that audition, you do your acting. The thing to remember is that's the beginning of the networking. What people should understand is when you're in a community like in New Jersey, the more I do, the more I realize how small the community is.
mm,
You run into the same people over and over again. And that's my same kind of pitch to actors as well is you're going to keep running into the same casting directors. If whether you're in New Jersey or New Mexico or in Arkansas, you're going to have local casting directors, and that's the start of your relationships. Because usually in
right,
a casting call, you're meeting the casting director, and there could be someone else like a producer or possibly even the director or someone else associated to the film, and that's your introduction to who you are. And when you
right,
leave, the next time you run into them, you're like, oh my gosh, yes, I auditioned for so and so. All right, let's go. Don't oversell it. But this is the beginning of your networking. Is don't
right.
be an asshole. You never know when you're going to run into someone again. And but to also something else you mentioned about the person that goes in there and I guess things to be wary about is also one of the things of what is networking not. And networking isn't going in there to any relationship, just meeting someone saying, can you do this for me? A lot of relationships that are going to work are going to be, how can we work together? Or,
Right.
but how can we work together should be really about like, oh, what can I do for you, Omar? My relationship with the local businesses here. So what I'm doing is I'm I have an independent film. The distribution world is pretty tough right now for independent films. And so I'm taking it upon myself to get the word out for my film. I need to do marketing. I don't have the money for marketing. So what I have been doing is teaming up with local businesses, and it's not me saying, "Hey, how can you promote me?" It's me reaching out to these people, creating a relationship and saying, if we work together, I could promote you, you could promote me, and now we're both mutually gaining whatever it
Right.
may be, whether I need followers or they need foot traffic. What Omar and I are trying to say is that like there's a your network isn't just everyone, it's people who are invested in your journey in some way, shape, or
S-
form.
Right. But I think also networking it's kind of like it's a complicated kind of thing to navigate because it also starts even before you go to these expos or these conferences or these networking parties because a lot of the networking is how you cement yourself in the industry, like how your name is going to be said. This goes back to how you work with people, how well you work with people, the impression you leave. Like my grandfather used to say, if you're going to do something, do it right because it's going to have your name on it.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of times when you're working on certain sets, and perfect example is working on a narrative once, a short narrative in the Bronx. We had one of the lighting guys couldn't make it. He had a family emergency, so we had to call up, hey, I need somebody else. He's like, my friend warned me. He's like, this guy is a bit of a pain in the ass. He's great, but he's a pain in the ass. Um, brought him on for the day. He was a pain in the ass. But because it was for one day, we all kind of sucked it up. And the next day, the other guy came back, everything was good. But I come to find out years later that he wasn't really getting long-term work because he was a pain in the ass. He
Yeah.
was getting like filler work, like, hey, I'm out for these 2 days. Can you fill in for me? Because nobody would stand to sign him for a whole 30-day on set because he was going to bump heads with everybody from producer to director because he thought he knew it all. this is the impression that you leave with people you work with. And the same thing when you're working on a production, in these networking sessions, I've had people ask me, "Oh, do you know a good so and so?" Or they say, "Oh, I'm working with so and so. What do you think of them?" These conversations are going to come up nonchalantly because people are going to say, "Oh, what films have you worked on?" "Oh, I've worked on this. I did. Oh, you know what? My friend worked on this." And then they're going to tell you the person's name, and you're going to have either a negative or a positive, you know, comment about the person. Like you said, Carl, after a couple of years, it's going to be the same faces. A lot of these people, they have the constant work because of the reputation they carry. Oh, like he's good. He'll get you under budget. He'll get you in under time. I depend on him. This I can't do a movie without so and so. There's certain people in the industry where you'll realize people will say that about them. I can't do this film without them, or I can't do XYZ without them, or oh man, I wish I would have had them on this last one because I really needed him. That's the kind of person you want to kind of leave an impact in because in networking situations, when people ask about you, and they will absolutely ask about, oh, I'm bringing on so and so for a project. Random, we just, two producers or two directors or two friends just having lunch. Be like, oh, you worked with so and so, right? What do you think of them? And the conversation will come up. People will ask you randomly. Like sometimes it's out of the blue, and you're like, oh, I didn't know you're working with so and so. I'm like, okay. So you have to, in network starts not just before you go to these meetings where you hand out your cards and you make the introduction and see how you guys can be beneficial and helpful to each other if they have something that you can help them with and vice versa. It also starts on the projects you worked previously. Because if you get a reputation like the previous lighting guy where nobody can stand it for more than a couple of days, nobody's going to hire you for more than a couple of days, you know? And eventually you might just fall by the wayside.
Yeah, and to piggyback off that, the response after making, again, I've only made short films. So I made my first feature, and the response after that has been far different
Mm,
than my short films. And it's pretty wild how many people have reached out to me and they had questions about the people that I've worked with. And they want to know because casting
mm,
directors will reach out to me and be like, "Hey, I referred this person to you. How were they on set? Are they fulfilling expectations? And I noticed that they weren't a part of this or this after the film was released." That's very important because that referral referral came from somebody who put their reputation on the line
mm.
and said, "Hey, I'm referring this talent to you." And they
Right.
wanted to make sure that when this person wasn't showing up for things or being involved in things, that I didn't have any ill will toward them. And they said that, I hope our relationship's still okay. And I apologize for referring this talent. And I had no regrets. I was like, no, I mean everything's fine. But it did happen, and it happened a couple times because I worked with three different casting directors in a um, non-committal relationship. They were just helping me out because they knew that my budget was so small,
Mm,
and so I got a lot of referrals through casting directors. And you better bet your ass that they followed up on how those people were to work with. And not only that, even as far as crew goes, people would reach out and be like, this looks good. What's it like to work with Nick? And regards to Nick, it was probably a far better experience than I could ever imagine. And I stand there waiting to refer him.
mm.
So what a difference your presence on set matters.
Right.
There were people who bailed on us going into the film. I have no like ill will. I wish them the very best. Will they get a call from me again moving forward? Probably not. And I'm not holding a grudge. I'm being, professional in the sense of I don't want to put my project or the project that other people are involved in and investing their time in at risk because either this talent or this crew member or whatever the association to the film may be, they might be putting it in jeopardy because they have a history of this.
Mm,
And I can't do that. In regards to people referring people to me, in regards to people reaching out looking for referrals, I think about that all the time. Um, Someone in the early stages, someone gave me a referral for I want to be very careful what positions I mention here, but someone gave me a referral and I worked with that person and they were absolute shit bomb.
Mm,
And they were taken by surprise because they didn't fully know them. And then it turned out that they ended up having problems after he referred them to me.
mm,
They had problems with this person. And um, not only did they come back and apologize, but they wanted to do something like, let me do something for you. Please let me do something for you. You know, how can I help move this forward? And it's like, obviously I didn't take that. I don't blame them, but that's how, I guess what I'm trying to say is networking, referrals or networking are so important to the person making the referral that if you're going to create any kind of issue, that you're probably not going to get referred. And then how is your career going to take off?
right,
The idea of asshole, I guess let me kind of take that back in a sense of be professional.
right.
You know, because it's you might not feel like you're being an asshole, but if you're creating some kind of unnecessary bump,
Or bad math in the film while you're on it. Right.
yeah, yeah, oh, for sure. You know, and I don't think that everyone's going to be happy all the time.
Right.
You know,
Absolutely. No, no.
especially on my shoot, um, you know, we were doing 6 days in a row. And I don't think I'll ever do that again with this amount of cast. I'm sorry, this amount of crew.
Right.
They were all for it. It was their idea. But at the end of the day, they're humans. And I knew going into the fifth day that you got to remember your crew is there morning. The first one's there, the last
The
one's to
last one's
leave.
out. Right.
They're tired. They are human beings. They're going to get agitated. And you're going to say to yourself, as the filmmaker, because don't forget, this is your big love. So nothing is going to get in your way. You have to understand that not everybody feels that way, that they are hired for a job. And now the stresses of the job are getting to them. And so to me, it's never about whether or not you're going to argue. Because even me and Nick, he's like a little brother to me. We bicker.
Hmm.
It's not about that. It's about how do you recover. And as long as there's recovery, who cares?
Right.
We're humans, you know? So I don't want to say your networking means you have to eat shit. Is because
Right.
was what I'm
No,
saying.
absolutely
And I
not.
don't think that my crew who were overextended, I hold, you know, I think we only had like one beef. And I don't look at that like, oh, I'll never refer these people again. I look at that as, you know what? We all picked 6 days.
Right.
It was a tough 6 days. I don't know if I'll ever do that again. People got tired and frustrated.
Yeah. And people forget also that, you as a filmmaker are watched because, it's not just you talking about the crew or the cast you work with. There's been sets I've been on where the actors have said, "Oh my God, I would never work with this director again." Anyway, something about
That
swords.
director wasn't Karl Ryan Erikson, was he?
No, 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 no. This director didn't have an actor reel. This guy was just straight
He's such a
directors.
stick, dude.
No, but it's like it's two-way, right? The actors are gonna tell you, and the crew is gonna tell you, because you know my history of where I worked, and I've worked on one feature with a certain director we should not say, who was just the epitome, like, oh my God, why did I sign up for this?
Yeah,
And to this
and
day,
that
he
has caught
still
up to him.
carries that. Yeah,
That caught up to him.
it
Not
did.
him, whoever that is,
Right,
and it caught up to that person, and you could see the struggles that that person's having getting people to work with them.
right. Because in the beginning it was fine, but once one film ends up like that, and then another film ends up like that, then it's hard for them to not have their name spread by other crew or actors. Like, oh, I work, so this is what's gonna happen. And at first somebody
Yeah,
will be like, oh no, nah, I'll take my chances, and they do, and then they come back to you and be like, you warned me. I'm like, I tried to, my friend, and they're like, yep, absolutely, and you're right. They are now in a slump where there's very few talented individuals in the industry who are willing to jump on any projects that they're, trying to headline right now. But yeah, so there's both
so
ways.
the talented person that Omar is referring to, you have to remember, is not just people have personalities. Okay.
Yes. That's
Okay.
understandable. That's
Yeah.
everybody. Everybody has a
We're
personality.
talking about someone who specifically tried to, I don't think you were on this shoot, but I do know that they specifically tried to fire some of the crew ahead of time so they didn't have to pay them at the end. Like
I did
that's
hear that. I
that
wasn't
that
on that one, no, but
yeah,
I did hear
that's
that.
the type of person we're talking about. So you're going to run into personalities. And that's the way it goes. And so when you're at the networking event, there's a difference between a strong personality and an asshole. I guess we should clear that up too. That you're going to run into people who are brash and in your face and are talented and do get things done.
Right.
And that's just the way it goes. They're not bad people.
They
That's
just
a,
see it, they see it in their head a certain way, and that's how they want to make sure it's projected. And that's more like a passion that this is their vision. They want the vision delivered how they see it. That's very different than, the person we were talking about.
so in regards to networking, there could also be the right time and place
Mm.
for a person who you're working with. When my film was in pre-production, and yeah, I had to do a lot of shit all myself, and it wasn't like I was um some I am a control freak, but it wasn't like I was not willing to open up. It was I was unable to find the people who I knew in the industry. I couldn't find anybody to help me. And I remember talking to someone, after my film was done, and they're like, okay, now that the film is done, like, who do you reach out to? And like, who are the people you're never going to talk to again? And I was like, well, what do you mean by that? And they're like, well, there's got to be people that screwed you over. And I was like, well, what do you mean screwed me over? And not helping you is not screwing you over.
Mm.
And that doesn't mean this person is out of your network for good now. What it means is that person wasn't in a place in their career or personal life to help you. That doesn't mean that they're not your network. That doesn't mean they're a bad person. And it doesn't mean that you shouldn't reach out to them again in the future. And that's something that's super important to keep in mind, that your network doesn't mean it needs to be someone who's going to, come running at the drop of a hat. Like
Right.
it's someone who's going to be there. You just have to have the right project and or right time.
Right.
Some of the reasons that people couldn't help me were, one, um, they don't work on these size projects anymore. They've now evolved into bigger projects. I can't
Right.
hold that against them. I don't want to make it sound like, oh, I don't care, but like if we never work together, that just means that they're constantly moving ahead and doing awesome things. And I think that's the best thing. I can't begrudge someone for that.
Right.
Um, or in the case of Mario, where it's like, it's not that he's not in my network. He's just not in my network for my feature because he couldn't take 18 days off. He couldn't take the time off. And I can't say, well, I'll never work with Mario again. What the fuck? He didn't help me. He is there for me. Just he so I think that's something to keep in mind is don't burn a bridge just because someone wasn't able to help you, even though you really wanted it to, or even though you really needed them to. Like
Right.
if the people who didn't help me would have helped me, would my film be in a stronger place? Yeah, 100%. 100%. But that's not on them. It's not on them to stop everything that they've got going on and to help you. And I think that's an important distinction, that like they're still in my network. We're just in different places. Perhaps one day we're going to be on the same level. And it's not one of those things where it's like, well, now you want to work with me? No, now we're able to work with each other.
Right.
I think that's the kind of attitude you have to have.
Look, we're filmmakers or storytellers or DP, director, producers, but before any title, we're human. Life is gonna hit you at one point or another, or situations, or finances, or family. And you're gonna have to stop in your tracks and adjust fire and fix it and address that situation and then get back to it.
The idea of fake it till you make it doesn't always translate correctly in the
It does
industry.
not. It does not.
When you are pretty like fake it till you make it, I think is sometimes position related. You know what I'm saying? Like I had to fake it till I made it
Right.
in my own
It's
feature, where all of that would have could have failed was on my shoulders. Is a
right.
lot different than taking a job where you want to fake it and make it. You have to understand that, like, the idea of faking it and make it sounds like a wonderful thing for those who were successful.
Right,
But when you're not, you're fucking over somebody and people in general.
right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, and people take that seriously.
They do again. Your reputation. You said you can deliver. You didn't, and like when if you're gonna be like, I'm not saying people shouldn't take up the challenges. Fake it till you make it is like, I don't know how to do this, but I'm gonna try to figure it out. Like that's fine if you're like somebody say, hey, can you color my film? You'd be like, I can, you know what? If you give me 30 days, I can. And they're like, okay, here's my film. You have 30 days. And then you can study up and learn all the techniques and, pass and play and spend those 30 days growing, learning, undoing your mistakes and then redoing them and getting it perfect. And certain things like that you can probably get away with if you're driven enough to study the guides, look at the YouTube tutorials, ask friends, get into a forum, ask all these people, what am I doing wrong? How can I fix? That's fine if you have that dream and passion. But on set, where like today's the day, we don't get another take at this. Fake until you make it probably shouldn't be your motto at that day.
And
Fake
and
until you make
and,
it.
and that's so important, Omar, because when I made my film, my money was from day to day.
Right, absolutely.
And I'll
Tight.
tell you right now, if I could have factored in 2 more days, I would have done it.
Right.
So that would have got me a lot more of the movement and things that I wanted within my film. So I didn't do that. What I'm saying is, if you fuck over a project and you screw up a day,
Hmm.
there's
That's a lot.
there's no money to recoup. There's no
Especially on
money.
those tight independent projects. Like
Yeah,
this
there's
is
no
it.
money to recoup that. There's no like we're now fucked. That's going to now cascade down and just keep messing up every other day, because that stuff's really hard to recover from
Right.
on a small film.
And depending on the film, that might be the shot, that might be the day, that might be the film. And if you couldn't get it, looking at you're looking at a really bad film or no film at all. For those who've never been on set, the best thing you could do is like, look, be honest with the person you're meeting. I want to get into film. I want to do X, Y, and Z. I don't know, but I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to, take up the spot. If you're going to meet other filmmakers because you want them to work on your projects, be honest, be sincere. Tell them what the project's about. Tell them it's a tight budget. Tell them because again, back to what Karl said, they might not be in that point in their careers anymore. There's some people I know who don't do music videos anymore at all, regardless of the artist, whether it's like a $5 million music video or $20,000 music, they don't do music videos anymore. You as you grow in the industry, you're gonna know what you like and what you don't like, and that's just as important as knowing your skill set and your limitations. Is what projects you're gonna take and what projects you're not. Be sincere when you meet somebody. Hey, I don't do X, Y, and Z. I'd like to help you. I have 3 recommendations, like you said. Here, I have some friends who might be able to. Here's their numbers. I'll put a good word for you. I'll let them know that you're going to call them, and then you guys can talk and see how that works out for you. Be sincere. Be genuine. It's for some people like Karl. It's hard because you're an introvert. You don't like talking to people. You kind of have to at that point break out of your shell because remember you're trying to tell everybody this is my story. In order to tell people your story, you have to talk people. You have to talk to people so they can hear your story. So it's hard. If you can't do it by yourself, bring a friend. Just be sincere. Plan on meeting new people. Don't plan on it too much. Your expectation is to meet somebody or a group of people who you can communicate, contact, and talk about shop, talk about films, talk about things, and see where it goes from there. That should be your expectation. Anything bigger than that, you're just gonna have a disappointing meet and greet or networking problem.
Networking isn't about meeting the right people. It's about becoming one of the right people to know. And I think that, in short, it's just be a nice person, be sincere, ask questions. And I think one of the best ways to network is to go in with the mindset of understanding that there's going to be a lot of people in situations that need you. You just have to let them know how to use you. Provide people with a reason to contact you. And if you don't have a lot of knowledge, I'll be 150%. If I have someone who's not knowledgeable, but is super friendly, super nice, and super, and it seems to have an initiative, you're right in the conversation. when I'm talking to someone who has experience, but I'm not really down with their personality. That's that's how I work. And I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who say, nope, I want the person with the skills. I get it. But I have a don't be an asshole policy on my film sets. Just be a good person. That's going to go such a long way and you're going to learn. People want to work with people who aren't going to cause them stress or money.
Right.
That's the simplest way I can think of it. And that is how you build your network. And it's slow.
It's about building a team that will help you reach your dream, and a team that you will reciprocate that affection and that support. So it's not just about how many people you have in your Rolodex, it's how many useful people you have in your Rolodex. So next time out there, go out there, network with a purpose. Don't just network to collect cards.